Hey everybody, Christopher McSweeney here, and we are going to be talking about assessments, also being joined by my dog, who's decided to play behind me. All right, in the last video I gave you some insight into how do I order my course, my curriculum in the content, right? What's the race kind of look like? And so in this video, it's going to be a little bit more personal as to what I did, and then this is, again, meant to be a reflection piece for you to really sit down and kind of dig into what you do and see if there's any changes that you want to make. And hopefully with that, you're thinking maybe you could try to do some more asynchronous assessing of your students. Okay, so I kind of talked about how there was these projects that were driving my content order, right? The major areas that I wanted to hit. And so how did I come up with those? It was really organic in how I came up with those assignments. It was just over the years of teaching Spanish, the things that came up that we needed to learn, right? What did I want my students to do? Wanted them to be able to describe themselves, describe their family, things like that. Those also happen to be major topics in my book, and so it kind of fit well together. What I recommend you do is that backwards design piece again. What do you want your students to know by the end of the course? And then that is really going to drive your assessments. And so that's kind of the main piece of what this all hinges on, is have you really taken time to reflect of what's the end goal of this course, right? The end of May or beginning of June, whatever your year is, what are your students going to be walking away with? And then work backwards from that. How do you get to there, right? So in my case, I wanted my students to be able to tell a detailed story in Spanish. I wanted them to have characters, describing characters, and what did those characters do, and what day did they do them, and what was the weather like, and what activities did they play sports, did they go out to eat, what were they wearing, things like that. And so since I had all those pieces of what did I finally want my students to do, I was able to kind of then go backwards and create all of the projects and assignments that led up to that. And with that, I was able to create the content order. So your content and your assessments go really hand in hand. Hopefully they go really hand in hand. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of issues for the students in figuring out, what am I doing in this class? So I'm going to read this real quick because it's easier to read right now. It's getting pretty late, it's midnight. So with asynchronous model, we need to give students the ability to complete an assignment with less input from the teacher, since we are just the facilitators now. It's best to break up a project into bite-sized chunks so students can complete it over time. Usually when we give a project, we say, here you go, it's due in 2 weeks, here's the rubric, here's the everything, ready, set, go. Can you break that down and say, here's the, part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, and when you put all those together, bam, you have your project. That would help students a lot. So with the asynchronous model, I think it is better to deliver the assessments in smaller bites, but also more frequently. How are you going to handle all this with all these assignments coming in, with all these assessments going out and all that stuff? How do you do this? You can automate as much as you want. I've really pushed forward in my class and leaned into the whole automation. For instance, my homework is all automated. Students watch videos of me. I run through a program called Edpuzzle. Edpuzzle controls the video. They watch it and they answer questions about it. Edpuzzle grades it for me and puts it into my gradebook automatically. And then I get a report whenever I want of who did the assignment, how many they get right, how many get wrong, and I didn't have to touch it, except for the very first time when I put it in my class. So I automated my homework. What other areas can you automate to kind of take a little bit of pressure off, because you're going to be assessing so frequently? Really leverage those technological tools that we have today to make this more manageable for you. Also, this goes into the next video, which is feedback. Students love getting feedback really quick, even if they don't do anything with it, really. If it's just a grade or a comment or whatever, students want that feedback because they did the work. So automating things really does ramp up that feedback loop, and then gives you some data to work with, so you can kind of see where your students are crushing it and where something might be off. The other area that we can really leverage technology with is giving options for assessments. So you are, the big question you want to answer is, what are you assessing, right? The answer should be you're assessing the learning that took place. Remember, teaching is what we do, learning is what the students do. We should assess whether or not they actually learned, and then make adjustments to make sure that they do learn that content. So, for instance, one of my favorite projects that ever came back to me was I had some students who were not my STAR students, who were into Spanish, but not really. They just kind of were there because they had to be. And on the project, they said, hey, can we work in a group? We have an idea for making this project, but in Minecraft. And I said, sure, yeah, go for it. That sounds awesome. And so when it was time to turn in their projects, that day they actually brought their Xbox to school with all the cords they needed, and they asked me if they could hook it up to the projector, and I was like, yes, do it. And so they actually hooked their Xbox up to a projector in my classroom, and they did their whole presentation playing Minecraft, but it was all in Spanish. And these students, again, were not my STAR amazing students. Was their Spanish perfect? No, but it was still one of my absolute favorite projects because of how into it they got. So leverage those technology tools, and especially the interest of your students to kind of help generate that momentum in your class. Let's look at our reflection questions. Here we go. When you answer these, I want you to answer them and then answer why as well to all of these, okay? So, how do you design your assessments? What type of assessments do you favor in your own class? How do your students finish assessments? Do they just get it done, or do they do their best? Have you noticed any trends in that? Why? Why is that happening? Why do you think it's happening, at least? And what are your assessments actually assessing? Are you just checking that box of I got to get this grade in, I got to make sure I have 5 tests every quarter or whatever it is? But what do you actually assess when you look back at some of the assessments that you've created? So take your time with this. I hope this video helps, and good luck.